Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all three past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer for Breeders' Cup Prep Recap, taking a look back at the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup at Saratoga, going 1.25 miles. This handicap division has been in disarray for most of the year. We've got a new shooter in here, and his name is Highland Falls. Let's watch the replay of the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Highland Falls is the number 6, Mike, and he takes the race right away to Arthur's Ride, the gray horse coming off a dominant sort of career-making performance in the Whitney. Highland Falls, he's not letting Arthur's Ride get away.
Yeah, you knew what the plan was going to be with Arthur's Ride in this race. They wanted to be on the front. And Flavian Pratt, listen, he won just about every stage race they ran at Saratoga this year. And this is how you want to ride a horse when you know that the speed to the outside is your main rival. Make that horse run to clear you to the first turn. That's what they did. He moves to the outside now, and he's just going to apply pressure to Arthur's Ride throughout the running here, Dan. When it push comes to shove, he's just the best horse.
Opening quarter and 23-1. This is going to be a classic fast, early, slow, late race where the final quarter was in 27 or so. But right now, Highland Falls is moving very comfortably outside of Arthur's Ride. And it looks like Tapit Trice is sitting in third, and he's going to get the trip, Mike. He defeated Highland Falls in his prior start at Monmouth, and he's got to be licking his chops sitting off the duel.
Oh yeah, he's in a perfect position here. These horses they're going at it a little bit here. No breathers for Arthur's Ride on the lead here. Highland Falls won't let him catch one, and it's Tapit Trice just sitting all alone behind these horses. But right now, Dan, they're still going, at it in front of this horse, and now everybody's under a ride behind these two duelers, and nobody's moving forward.
You're absolutely right. In the blink of an eye or so, in that 23 and change third quarter mile, everybody in the back went to panic mode because now they're outpaced turning for home, and now Arthur's Ride's in panic mode because he can't go with Highland Falls. Now, this last quarter mile might be a little bit of a stagger fest, but you got to give Highland Falls credit. He did the dirty work from beginning to end, while Arthur's Ride's going to tire very badly to finish 5th.
Yeah, Arthur's Ride all done. They just passed the 8th pole. He is all done, and he's going to give this thing up. He's just going up and down at this point, but the winner is still going on here, and he's staying on pretty well here. Yeah, he's tired at the end of this race. He deserves to be. He did all the hard work in here. He lasted till the end. There was never a real point in this race where it looked like he was going to lose. This was a really, really strong performance from this horse.
Highland Falls earned a 104 buyer speed figure for this performance. Certainly a strong number, and he's still a very lightly raced runner. There's potential for upside, and Brad Cox is hoping for that as this horse heads towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. Let's talk about Arthur's Ride. This is a horse with brilliant early speed, and he won the Whitney earlier in the meet at Saratoga, and he looked very good doing it. Is he a need-to-lead type that when you put heat on him, he's in trouble? Or was the Whitney maybe flattered a little bit because it was a wet track?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, I guess, that you have to take into consideration. I mean, listen, he also has the win prior to the Whitney, though, Dan, on faster going 1.25 miles, which is a 111 buyer. So I don't think you're going to look at the Whitney and say, it was a wet track thing. This horse, when things go his way, he's obviously talented and capable of really good things. I guess what we found out in the Jockey Club Gold Cup is if you really make him race on the front end, maybe he's just not up for that. I mean, I don't really know what to do with it now because his Whitney, man, it's not like he walked on the lead. I know he didn't take pressure like he did in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but he went a solid pace and he blew that field out.
And the good news is that a great horseman in Bill Mott is not giving up on Arthur's Ride off one poor performance. He is going to train him up to the Breeders' Cup Classic, and there is a chance that at Del Mar, where speed can be very friendly, he might be the controlling speed in the Breeders' Cup Classic at what could be a price. Tapit Trice offered hope for those that believed he was a nice horse last year when he won his seasonal debut at Monmouth over Highland Falls. He gave ground every step of the way. He looked way more professional. He ran a complete race. Here, he looked like he was in the catbird seat and then all of a sudden went from hero to zero.
Yeah, he just all of a sudden came up empty in that race. Perfect trip, perfect ride in here. He was always well positioned, but when that race really started around the final turn, he just really couldn't keep up. Wound up getting nailed for third right on the wire, but it was a distant third. It's also at least worth pointing. I mean, I'm with you. His return from the layoff, I thought, it felt like a real step in the right direction. But when you go back and watch that race, yeah, he carried the ground. Highland Falls had a little bit of a trip behind him in there, finishing second. So I don't think it's that surprising that he turned the tables.
Disarm was second in the Travers last year and then missed the rest of his 3-year-old campaign with injury. He returned in his first 2 starts at Churchill for Steve Asmussen with bar shoes. And then in his most recent start, you were talking to me about it. He was a little bit studdish in the paddock. Here he didn't break very well. He fell far behind. He came with a run. Is it a sign that Disarm is rounding back into form, or did he sort of just clunk up and get a piece?
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. I mean, I thought he sort of just clunked up here, and it was, all in all, it felt like a really good ride to me for Rosario. Yeah, he wound up last early, but he got to save a ton of ground in this race. The pace was going in front of him. So he certainly had something to run at. I mean, when you go back to that replay, Dan, he and Pyrenees, the runner-up in this race, they're sort of on even terms as that field goes into the far turn. And then all of a sudden, Disarm can't keep up with Pyrenees, and he falls far behind, and he's just sort of grinding on through the stretch. He got third in here, a grade 1 placing. I thought all in all, it was pretty disappointing.
Let's talk a little bit about Pyrenees, because he's one of the more underrated horses in the division. And it seems every time he shows up, he fires a pretty good shot. And he was really the only horse making up some ground at the end of this race against Highland Falls. We know a distance of ground is no issue for him. We know he's very, very consistent. He lacks a lot of sizzle of some of the big names of horses going to the Breeders' Cup, but you can't knock his consistency. And wherever he shows up, he's going to be a good price.
I agree. I just like this horse. He's getting better. He probably has to move forward, I mean, quite a bit if they run him in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but he can get any kind of a trip in a race. I think he will stay the distance. He paired up 97 buyers in his prior 2 starts. He upped it to a 99 in this race. He was clearly second best in here, albeit with a good trip and a good setup. I don't know. I just like this horse, and I'm not going to sit here and suggest that he's a major contender come Breeders' Cup Day, but this horse is pretty good.
Kuchar was overmatched, and Bright Future, last year's Jockey Club Gold Cup winner, just doesn't seem to have come back as good this year. I know he won his seasonal debut at Monmouth, but I think he just won that race on class alone, because he looked beaten at the 5/16 that day and didn't make any impression here.
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, he won this Jockey Club Gold Cup last year with a triple-digit buyer, and it just felt like he was going to come back as a 5-year-old and be a real factor. And after that Salvatore Mile, he was awful in the Whitney. He was worse in this race.
Let's take a closer look at Highland Falls. He's a Godolphin homebred, and as such, he has a regal pedigree. He's by Super Stallion Curlin out of Breeders' Cup Distaff winner Round Pond. Obviously, there have been high hopes for Highland Falls since day one, and Brad Cox has treated him like a pretty good horse, running him in the Oaklawn Handicap, where he earned a big figure second to Skippy Longstocking, shipping out to the Big Cap in Southern California, where he ran an okay 4th, I believe. Highland Falls was a little bit disappointing leading up to this race, but apparently he's put it all together.
I mean, this was just a breakout performance for this horse. You're right. They've always sort of treated him like a good horse. He has run some okay races in the past, but maybe he just needed a little bit of time to develop. He's obviously got the pedigree for these 1.25 mile races, Dan, and he showed that in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He ran hard from start to finish. He was much the best.
Cox has a decision to make with Highland Falls. Does he run him one more time before the Breeders' Cup, or does he send him in fresh off the win in the Jockey Club? We'll monitor that on DRF.com over the next few weeks. But Highland Falls, with a 104 buyer speed figure, paid a very good price in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Let's take a look at the mutual payouts. Highland Falls returned $16 to win. The likable Pyrenees ran on for second at a good price, and Disarm, also a nice price, was third, as odds-on Arthur's Ride faltered to 5th. Highland Falls, winner of the Jockey Club Gold Cup, an important prep for the BC Classic.